Welcome to Hidden Ties, where every story hides a deeper truth. I had just opened the email when the words jumped out at me. You've been selected for a full scholarship. It wasn't just a scholarship, it was my ticket to freedom. Freedom I thought I'd never get because my parents were pulling me out of university. Before we continue, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I'd love to know. I was 21 years old, living in a small town just outside of Chicago. My name's Monica, and I've spent my whole life being the good daughter, the one who never caused trouble, never strayed from the rules. My parents raised me with the belief that education was the key to success, but more importantly, they raised me to believe that their decisions were final. I had always dreamed of going to university, studying literature, and maybe becoming a writer or an editor, but my reality was much more grounded. I had spent the last 2 years at a community college, working part-time at a local cafe, just trying to get through the day. The tuition, the costs, the endless paperwork, it all felt like I was drowning. My parents could barely afford the community college tuition, let alone the full 4-year degree I had always dreamed of. Monica, you need to focus on getting a job after school. That's the real world, my dad would say every time I brought up university. He worked at a car repair shop, and my mom was a nurse, so their practical mindset had always shaped how I viewed the future. But for me, my future had always been about more than just surviving. It was about learning, growing, creating something out of nothing. When I was younger, my world revolved around books and stories, and I loved the idea of making a career out of it. But that dream had always been a distant echo, drowned out by the daily reality of working long shifts, helping my mom with chores, and trying to make ends meet. Then everything changed one night. My parents sat me down at the kitchen table, where the air always felt thick with unspoken rules and expectations. "Monica," my mom said softly, her eyes not meeting mine, "we've made a decision. You're not going back to university. You're coming back home." I felt my heart sink. The thought of leaving university, the one place I felt like I could truly grow, crushed me. "Well, what?" I stammered, my voice trembling. "But I was already registered for next semester. I have plans. No," my dad interrupted, his voice firm. "We've talked about it. You're staying home and helping around here. You can't keep throwing money away on something that's not going to lead anywhere. It's not practical." My world spun. The scholarship I'd applied for, the hope I'd clung to for years, now felt so far out of reach. "But I've worked hard. I can't just give up now." I was desperate, trying to make them understand. "This is final," my mom said. "No more arguing. We've made our decision." That was it. I felt like I had no control, no say in the one thing I truly cared about. But what they didn't know was that I'd been hiding something from them, something I'd found out about a few weeks ago. When I say I was hiding something, I mean it in the most literal sense. There, buried in the pile of unopened letters and unread emails, was the email that could change everything. I had been hesitant to open it at first. I figured it was just another one of those spam messages or a rejection letter from the dozens of applications I had sent out. But this one was different. "You've been selected for a full scholarship to attend the University of Chicago," it said. I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands shook as I reread the email. Full scholarship. To a place I had dreamed of my entire life. I could go there, get the education I needed, live on campus, finally experience the freedom I craved. But what could I do with it? I couldn't exactly wave it in my parents' faces and tell them they were wrong. It wasn't like I was going to stand up at the dinner table and say, "Hey, guess what? I've got a full ride and you can't stop me." They'd never accept it. They had already made up their minds about my future, and no amount of reasoning would change that. I spent days thinking about how to approach the situation. I knew that if I told them about the scholarship, they would simply shut me down. My parents were firm believers in the practical route, the predictable future. University was for those with connections and money, and I had neither. Besides, They'd already decided that I needed to help with the household. But here's where it got tricky. My scholarship didn't just cover tuition. It also provided a living stipend, which meant I could afford to live on my own. I didn't need to rely on them for support anymore. It was an opportunity, an escape, something I couldn't ignore. I kept the scholarship a secret. I told myself it was just temporary, that I'd figure out how to break the news to them later. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't back out now. Not after everything I'd been through. My parents had no idea that I had this scholarship. I didn't want to tell them, not yet. Not while they were so set on their decision. One night, after my shift at the cafe, I was sitting at the kitchen table, mindlessly scrolling through my phone when my dad walked in. He leaned against the counter, looking at me like he always did, like I was still that little girl who needed his guidance. "You know, Monica," he began, his tone casual but firm, "we've been talking more, and we think it might be a good idea if you start looking for a full-time job. You're already doing part-time work. Why not make it permanent?" I could feel the walls closing in around me. I didn't want to disappoint him, but I also didn't want to settle into a life I wasn't meant for. "Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I've been thinking about it, and maybe I want something more. I've been working hard for this degree, this life, and I don't want to give up on it." He frowned, as if my words didn't compute. "What are you talking about?" I paused. This was it. The moment I had to choose. I had to either fight for my dream or let it go. "I've been accepted to a university, a full scholarship, Dad. I can finally—" "Monica," he interrupted, shaking his head. "Not this again. You're not going anywhere. We've talked about this. The family needs you here, and you're wasting time on something that's not going to help us." "But I'm not wasting time," I said, my voice rising. "This scholarship means everything to me. I can't let it slip away just because you decided it's not worth it." The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. I could feel my stomach twist into knots. I had never talked to him like this before, never stood up to him in such a way. But this time, something was different. I was no longer the girl who followed every rule. I wasn't going to back down this time. "I'm going to take it," I blurted out, my heart pounding in my chest. "What?" His voice went low and dangerous. "You're not taking anything. You're staying here, and that's final." I stood up from the table, my hands trembling with a mix of fear and determination. "No, I'm not. You can't make me stay. I'm going to take that scholarship, and I'm going to leave. You don't get to decide my future anymore." I had never seen my father look so furious. His face turned red, his fists clenched, but I didn't care. I couldn't back down now. "I've already made up my mind," I said, my voice trembling but resolute. "I'm leaving, and you can't stop me." The words hung in the air like a challenge, like a dare, but they also felt like my only chance at freedom. It didn't take long for the fallout to start. My dad didn't speak to me for days after our argument. My mom tried to mediate, but she was caught in the middle of it all, stuck between her love for me and her loyalty to my father's decision. I could tell she didn't fully agree with his stance, but she was too afraid to challenge him. And deep down, I knew she didn't have the strength to help me in the way I needed. I packed my things quietly, nothing dramatic, no tearful goodbyes. I knew if I made a scene, they would try to convince me to stay. So I slipped out the door one morning while they were still asleep, leaving behind a note that felt so empty compared to the years of life I had spent in that house. "I'm going to university. I'll make my own way. I love you." That was all I wrote, and in my mind it felt like an irreversible decision, like a line drawn in the sand, one I couldn't cross back over. I arrived at my new dorm with a mix of excitement and terror. The campus was everything I had imagined, people my age, filled with energy and ambition. I felt so small and out of place, but also strangely hopeful. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But that hope quickly turned to doubt. A few days later, I received an unexpected message from my mom. "Monica, We need to talk. I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared to hear her disappointment, the guilt in her voice that would make me question everything I had just fought for. But I couldn't ignore her, so I called her back. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You need to come home," she said, her voice low and heavy. "Your he's really upset, Monica. This isn't like you. You can't just leave us like that." "I didn't leave you," I replied, fighting to keep my emotions in check. I need to do this for myself. I can't keep living for other people." There was a pause, and I could hear her breathing on the other end. "We're family, Monica. We need to stick together." But I knew in my heart that this was the problem. They had always wanted me to fit into their mold, to follow their plans. They had never given me room to breathe, to dream. And now that I had finally found my own path, they were trying to pull me back in. "Mom," I said, taking a deep breath, "I'm sorry, but I can't come back. Not now." She didn't respond at first, and I could almost hear the tears in her voice. "Please, Monica, you're hurting your father." And that's when I realized something. They didn't see me, not for who I was, not for what I could become. They saw me as an extension of their lives, their dreams. They couldn't understand that I wanted something different, something of my own. "I need this," I said softly, trying to make her understand. "I need to be here." The conversation ended shortly after that, and I spent the next few days wondering if I had made the right choice. Was I being selfish? Was I throwing away everything for the sake of a dream that might not even pan out? Then, something unexpected happened. One evening, while I was sitting in my dorm room, scrolling through my phone to distract myself, I got another message. This one wasn't from my parents. It was from my scholarship coordinator. "Monica, we wanted to inform you that there has been a change in your scholarship status. Please check your email as soon as possible." I felt a knot form in my stomach. My heart raced as I clicked open the email. "Dear Monica, we regret to inform you that due to changes in the university's funding structure, your scholarship has been temporarily placed on hold pending a review." I read the words over and over again, but they didn't make sense. My scholarship? On hold? How could this happen? This was my chance, my way out. I stood up, pacing the room. The walls suddenly felt too close, the air too thick. Everything I had fought for seemed to be slipping away from me. I had finally broken free from my parents' control, only to find myself in a different kind of trap. I had no idea how to fix it. The university wouldn't give me any clear answers, and my scholarship coordinator promised to reach out again soon. But the uncertainty felt like a weight on my chest. Days passed, and my confidence began to slip. My dreams, once so clear, were now clouded by doubt. I was alone in this new world, surrounded by students who seemed to have everything figured out. They had their family's support, their financial aid packages. They weren't fighting an uphill battle every single day. But there was one thing I still had. I wasn't going to let my parents' decision, or this scholarship hiccup, define me. I had come too far to give up now. By the time the email came through confirming that my scholarship had been reinstated, I had already gone through a roller coaster of emotions. The uncertainty of that week had nearly broken me, but in a strange way, it had also made me more determined than ever. This scholarship was not just a ticket to a better future, it was my declaration that I was in control of my life, and nothing, not even my parents or my doubts, could take that away from me. I sat in my dorm room, staring at the screen, rereading the message from the university. "Your scholarship has been fully reinstated. We apologize for the inconvenience. You are all set to begin your courses." A flood of relief washed over me. For a moment, I felt like I could finally breathe again. I quickly forwarded the email to my parents, hoping they would understand what this meant for me. The next day, I got a call from my mom. I braced myself for more guilt trips, more tears, but when I answered the phone, her tone was different, softer. "Monica, we got your email," she said. "I saw that you got the scholarship back. I don't know what to say." I hesitated. "I know this is hard for you both," I said, trying to sound calm, like I had everything under control, even though my hands were shaking. But this is something I need to do. I can't stay here forever. I need to go after what I've worked for. I could hear her sigh on the other end. I understand, Monica. I do. But your father is still upset. He doesn't know how to feel about all of this. We didn't raise you to leave us like this. I winced, her words stabbing at me. I knew she meant well, but it was clear my parents didn't understand that this was more than just a university. This was me stepping into a world that didn't belong to them. And it wasn't about rejecting them. It was about finding a path that was mine alone. I'm not rejecting you, I said quietly. I just need to do this for me. Please understand that. There was a long silence before she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, honey. I do. I just don't know how to let go. It was a confession I hadn't expected to hear from her. My mom had always been the strong one, the caretaker, the one who put family above everything else. And now, in this quiet moment, I realized she was afraid, not just for me, but for herself. Losing me to my dreams meant losing her connection to the girl she had always known. I'm sorry, I whispered, the weight of it all pressing down on me, but I have to go, and I can't keep apologizing for it. After that, we didn't talk much for a few days. My parents were still processing the idea that I had taken control of my future, that I wasn't the little girl they could hold on to anymore. And while that hurt, I knew it was a necessary pain that would push me forward, no matter how much it hurt them. I threw myself into my studies. I needed to prove to myself that I belonged here, that I could handle this. The classes were harder than I expected, the pace faster, and the pressure mounting, but I kept going. Every time I felt like giving up, I thought about the scholarship. I thought about how much I had fought for this chance, how much I had sacrificed to get here. The problem was, I wasn't just fighting for my dreams anymore. I was also fighting against the weight of my parents' expectations, their disappointments, and their relentless pressure to conform. And while I understood that they wanted what was best for me, their definition of best had never aligned with mine. Then, the final blow came one cold afternoon in November. I was sitting in the library, trying to focus on a paper due the next day, when my phone buzzed. It was a message from my mom. Monica, your father wants to talk to you. Please call him when you get the chance. My heart dropped. There was a heaviness to her words that made me instantly anxious. I hadn't heard from my dad directly since that night we argued. I didn't know if he was calling to lecture me again, or if he had finally come to terms with my decision. I stood up, pacing in the library, trying to calm my nerves. I called him back. Dad? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Monica, he said, his tone colder than I had expected. You need to stop this. This dream you have. It's not real. You're wasting your time and your money. You should come back home. Your mother and I can't keep supporting you like this. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I kept it in check. I'm not coming back. This is my life, and I'm not going to let you control it anymore. You don't get it, Monica, he snapped, his voice hard. You think you're so much smarter than us, don't you? We've been trying to give you everything, and now you're just throwing it away. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the tears. I'm not throwing anything away, Dad. I'm building something for myself. I'm not you. I'm not Mom. And I'm not going to keep living in your shadow. There was a long pause, and I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end. Finally, he spoke again, his voice softer, but still strained. I don't know who you are anymore, Monica. I don't know what happened to my daughter. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to apologize, to go back to that version of myself that fit their mold. But another part of me, the one that had been suffocating all these years, couldn't go back. Not anymore. I'm still your daughter, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But I'm not the person you want me to be. I can't be. I hung up before he could say anything else. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I knew I had made the right decision. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. The weeks following my confrontation with my father felt like I was walking a tightrope. I didn't know if I was falling or standing tall. On the outside, I was succeeding, getting decent grades, meeting new people, adjusting to life at the university, but inside, I was a wreck. Every moment of quiet was filled with the guilt of what I had done, the anger bubbling underneath, and the desire to keep pushing forward despite it all. But then, just when I thought I couldn't carry the weight of this secret life any longer, something unexpected happened. It started small. I was sitting in the library trying to finish an assignment when I noticed a shadow fall across my desk. I looked up, startled, and saw a girl standing there, holding a stack of papers. She was tall, with dark hair that she kept tucked behind her ears, and an easy smile that made me feel like I was about to be pulled into something I wasn't ready for. She had that air about her, the one that made everything feel like it was just meant to be. "Hi, Monica, right?" she asked, her voice light and warm. "I'm Jess. I saw you in one of my classes, and I've been meaning to introduce myself." I blinked at her, not sure if I had heard her right. "Oh, hi. I know this might sound weird," she continued, sitting down across from me without waiting for an invitation. "But I heard you were one of the scholarship winners for this year. I was actually wondering if you could give me some advice on how to apply for next year's scholarships. I heard you're really good at that kind of stuff." I stared at her for a moment, still unsure of what was happening. Me? Good at applying for scholarships? I was struggling just to stay afloat. But Jess didn't give me time to doubt myself. She grinned like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Honestly, I'm kind of impressed you even made it here with that kind of scholarship. I mean, the full ride. How'd you even manage that?" Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I hadn't talked about the scholarship with anyone. It wasn't something I was proud of, not because I didn't want it, but because I was ashamed of how it had come to me. I was ashamed of the secret I had been keeping from my parents. But Jess didn't seem to care about any of that. She was just interested, curious. And the more she asked, the more I found myself talking. She listened to every word like it was the most important thing she'd ever heard. She had this way of making you feel seen, making you feel like you weren't alone. After that conversation, Jess became my lifeline. We started meeting for lunch, studying together, and talking about everything, our dreams, our fears, our goals. She was open in a way I wasn't, but I couldn't help but admire her for it. And slowly, I began to realize something important. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only one here fighting for a chance to be more, to create something out of nothing. Jess had her own story, her own struggles with her family's expectations, and somehow talking to her made me feel less guilty. She wasn't perfect. She wasn't living a dream of wealth and privilege. She was working hard, just like me, and she wasn't ashamed of it. One afternoon, as we were leaving the library, Jess turned to me, her face serious. "Monica," she said, "you're doing the right thing, you know? You've got to keep going. Whatever's happening with your family, you've made it this far. They might not see it now, but you're doing something most people never even attempt." Her words hit me hard, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Jess wasn't just comforting me. She was showing me that what I was doing had value, whether or not my parents agreed with it. And that's when everything clicked into place. I had been so focused on what I was losing, my family's approval, their support, that I hadn't noticed what I was gaining. I was gaining independence. I was gaining a future of my own making, and I was finally finding the courage to fight for it. A few days later, I called my parents again. This time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't defensive. I was calm, resolute. "Mom, Dad," I began, "I know things have been hard between us, but I want you to know that I'm not giving up. I'm not throwing my life away. I'm doing something important for myself." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then my mother spoke. "We know, Monica. We've been thinking about everything and, well, your father and I talked. I braced myself for the worst, But what she said next took me completely by surprise. "We don't agree with everything you've done," she continued, her voice wavering slightly. "But we understand. We just want you to be happy, to be safe." I felt a lump form in my throat. My heart hammered in my chest as I tried to find the words. "Mom, are you serious?" "Yes," she replied. "We may not understand your choices, but we want you to know we support you. If this is the path you've chosen, we'll respect it." For the first time since I left, I felt a weight lift off my chest. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was progress. They had finally acknowledged that I was my own person and that I could make my own decisions. But it wasn't just my parents who had changed. I had changed. I had faced my fear, my guilt, and my anger. And through it all, I had emerged stronger, more certain of my path. I wasn't just fighting for a scholarship anymore. I was fighting for my right to live my life on my terms, to chase my dreams without apology. The journey wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt, still days when I wondered if I was doing the right thing. But each time I thought about giving up, I remembered Jess, remembered the conversations we had shared, and remembered the strength I had gained. And when I looked at my life now, standing here halfway through my first semester at university, I knew I had made the right choice. The scholarship wasn't just an academic opportunity, it was the key to my freedom. It was my chance to create something I could be proud of. The person who stepped into this university was not the same person who had left home, unsure and afraid. I had found my voice, my power, my future, and that was worth everything.